It's good. She's with them now.
Welcome to Watch Mojo, and today we're counting down our picks for the horror gems that we think deserve more attention.
Can you show no mercy?
Number 50, Cam.
I don't know how to be any more clear. She's online pretending to be me.
The horror genre is constantly evolving, and this evolution allows for new kinds of life experiences to be adapted to the silver screen. Sex worker representation in cinema has been around for ages, but 2018's Cam presents a new look at the industry and the modern forms it can take. The film focuses on a particular type of in-home adult entertainment, while also exploring thematic elements of obsession, voyeurism, perfectionism, and the male gaze. The end results are totally unique. We highly recommend Cam for the horror fan who's weary of the same old formulas and eager for something new.
Oh, hi. Are you Tinker's girlfriend? Hi.
Number 49, God Told Me To. Larry Cohen's movies, both horror and otherwise, are unlike anything else in genre cinema. This urban auteur has always possessed a knack for unique perspectives, ideas, and dialogue, often melding multiple genres within his work. God Told Me To from 1976 combines elements of both police procedurals and horror in its narrative about a rash of violent crimes.
If there are others, they'll be like me. Your children would have been like me. If you hadn't willed them to die. I didn't!
The New Age movement that took hold during the 1970s is placed front and center, as all of the suspects are held in the thrall of a sinister religious cult. God Told Me To even features comic legend Andy Kaufman as one of the killers, but make no mistake, Cohen's film is frighteningly effective.
God told me to.
Number 48, The Brood. David Cronenberg's work in body horror is rightfully lauded today as a filmography chock full of disturbing classics. That said, The Brood from 1979 remains one of the director's less discussed films, which makes it ripe for a revisit in the modern day. Cronenberg defies social taboos by making his villains childlike representations of a mother's past trauma.
But you didn't protect me. And you should have. You pretended it wasn't happening. You looked away.
These creatures are physically willed into existence by psychoplasmic offspring tethered to their mother, Nola Carveth. The practical effects lend these creations an insidious screen presence, and the resulting violent acts that are committed on Nola's behalf bury themselves within our memories.
Isolation is part of my therapy, Frank. What's been happening to me has been just too strange.
Number 47, Veronica. In less capable hands, the horror tropes in this 2017 Spanish film might have come across as cliché. Attempts at Ouija board communication? Check. Demonic symbols and possession? Double check. Yet Veronica succeeds despite using these well-worn plot devices because of its sincerity and dedication to fostering fear, uncertainty, and trepidation.
No estás sola. Alguien respondió a tu llamada. Y ahora camina contigo.
The acting is uniformly good throughout the film, and the scary sequences are effective enough for audiences to buy in and buckle up for the ride. Veronica fits in nicely with the Spanish horror industry's enviable pedigree, while also standing on its own for modern representation within the genre. Number 46, Nightbreed.
Who will come for us?
His name is Cabal.
Clive Barker's work doesn't begin and end with the Hellraiser franchise. In fact, 1990's Nightbreed stands right up there with Pinhead and the other Cenobites, particularly the extended Cabal cut that's resurfaced in recent years. The imagination and practical effects are out of this world, as Barker's universe of outcast monsters is brought to life. The underworld of Midian, which is fleshed out in the longer cut of Nightbreed, feels lived in and contains a wealth of unique, memorable characters. David Cronenberg cuts a truly reprehensible villain, with his Dr. Decker serving as one of Barker's most sinister antagonists.
How do you know my name?
Oh, that's a good question. Here's the answer.
Number 45, Martin. Director George Romero is rightfully lauded as a master of undead cinema, but fans of the man's work should not sleep on his non-zombie films. 1977's Martin is perhaps the director's most underrated piece.
He is young for Nosferatu. There have been 9 such occurrences in the family. There are 3 still alive. Martin is one.
The film appears, on the surface at least, to be about vampires. However, Martin is more of a character study than anything, a slow-burn gem about a curious young man with the troublesome habit of stealing people's blood without consent. Yes, the titular Martin believes he is a vampire, but this definitely isn't your average Universal or Hammer horror jam. It's something completely different.
Are you making fun of me?
I'm with you, Count, huh? I mean, you're absolutely right. You're all right, my man.
Well, I don't know what I'm gonna do. I really don't.
Number 44, Wait Until Dark. Horror movies are not historically based on stage plays, but then again, Wait Until Dark isn't your average scary movie. The film hinges upon a pair of excellent performances from Audrey Hepburn and Alan Arkin. The former plays a woman who is blind, while Arkin is all slime and menace. Filmed primarily on a single set, Wait Until Dark feels all the more claustrophobic and tense as a result.
Are you gonna give me that doll, Susie?
I can't.
I don't believe you, Susie.
I don't have it anymore.
Hepburn's character ends in a much different place than she begins, as she's forced to fend off both mental and physical attacks from 3 home invaders. Elements of modern gaslighting also come into play, while the film's final act is a white-knuckle exercise in anxiety.
Keep tapping. Tap. Tap. Tap.
Number 43, The Orphanage. This is another Spanish horror film that proves the industry is still alive and well in the modern day. There's a wealth of atmosphere here that feels indebted to the European Gothic horrors of the 1960s and 70s. Yet The Orphanage also feels fresh thanks to the honesty of the performances.
Pues yo no puedo irme todavía.
Yo no voy a seguir viviendo en esta casa. Y tú no te vas a quedar aquí sola.
No puedo irme de un día para otro. Son demasiados recuerdos, Carlos.
There's almost a fairy tale-like feeling to the film's plot, which revolves around a woman's desire to turn her childhood orphanage into a haven for youth with disabilities. We're not talking Disney fairy tales, however, but more of a Brothers Grimm vibe, complete with all of the thematic darkness that comparison entails.
No!
Number 42, NECromantic. West German director Jörg Buttgereit captured one of humanity's greatest taboos with his transgressive 1987 film NECromantic. We're speaking specifically about necrophilia, but that's not all this intensely disturbing and controversial film has to offer its viewers. Sex, death, and real-life animal violence combine with a memorably creepy musical score to create an unsettling viewing experience. In fact, the legacy of NECromantic was so complicated that the film was banned for many years in many countries. Today, however, the themes of social apathy, anxiety, and death fetishism have been largely reassessed as artful, and depending on the viewer, even perversely beautiful. Number 41, Deep Red. This list is full of brilliant horror filmmakers, but Dario Argento stands among the very best of Italy's macabre maestros. Efforts such as Tenebrae and his 1975 masterpiece Deep Red serve as textbook examples of that country's giallo cycle. These were pulpy, homegrown thrillers that often combined elements of police procedurals and mysteries alongside gruesome murder set pieces. The visuals in Deep Red are particularly stylish and are amplified by Goblin's booming progressive rock score. The mystery is compelling too, as are the performances of David Hemmings and Argento's former wife and collaborator Daria Nicolodi. Number 40, The Wailing. This movie delves into a number of different genres, from occult horror to police procedurals to classic zombie cinema. Yet this modern horror classic also manages to feel even more expansive than those solid influences. The Wailing takes audiences into a universe of mysticism, leading into an almost impenetrable darkness. Director Na Hung-jin constructs a bleak narrative here, together with more cerebral dialogues on grief, superstition, and real-world evil. The Wailing asks a lot of questions, and the answers it gives may not exactly leave you feeling good about how the world works, but you will never forget the experience.
귀신이 들러붙어가고 그런 거인가, 그것이.
뭐 처음엔 그랬겠지.
Number 39, Lake Mungo.
Palmers were really doing it tough at that time. When I think of how bad it was back then, it's hard to imagine how much worse they would get.
There have been a number of horror films that utilize the grieving process as a backdrop for their stories. Don't Look Now is a classic example of this, while 2008's Lake Mungo feels somewhat like kin to that 70s shocker, with a solid update to that central dramatic theme. The found footage style utilized within Lake Mungo doesn't feel cheap or out of place, but instead serves to ramp up the drama and service the story. The unbelievable tragedy that befalls the family in this film makes it easy to connect with all of the docudrama elements at play. And the overall creepiness of Lake Mungo still gives us chills.
At some point, this figure came towards her from out of the darkness.
Number 38, The Black Cat.
Supernatural, perhaps. Baloney, perhaps not. There are many things under the sun.
This collaboration between horror icons Boris Karloff and Bela Lugosi may not be as well known as Dracula or Frankenstein, but it could be argued that The Black Cat is actually as significant. There's a wealth of stylistic influence here from German Expressionism, while Lugosi and Karloff's respective performances certify their greatness as masters of their craft. The Black Cat possesses a malevolent atmosphere and enduring haunting sense of grandeur. This is Golden Age horror polished to gleaming perfection, with a surprising bite that made it subversive and boundary-pushing for its day.
That's what I'm going to do to you now. Tear the skin from your body. Slowly. Bit by bit.
Number 37, The Hitcher.
You want to know what happens to an eyeball when it gets punctured?
Certain classic films will never be eclipsed by remakes. This stunning 1986 original stars Rutger Hauer in one of his grisliest and most memorable roles as a demented hitchhiker who relentlessly stalks a young man played by C. Thomas Howell. Howell and his co-star Jennifer Jason Leigh are more than a match on screen for Hauer, and it's the nerve-wracking push and pull that serves as the crux of The Hitcher. This horror film is pure tension personified, and it's Hauer's obsessive performance that's burned into our collective subconscious forever as a good reason to never pick up a hitchhiker.
Because I cut off his legs and his arms and his head.
Number 36, Dead and Buried.
You will try to kill me, Dad, but you can't. You can only make me dead. Go on, pull the trigger.
A film is only as good as its script, and 1981's Dead and Buried had a boffo screenwriting team in the form of Dan O'Bannon and Ronald Shusett. Their creativity within the confines of genre cinema shines once again with this film, as it did with Alien. Dead and Buried at once feels both nostalgic and current. On the one hand, the body snatcher tropes going on within the small town of Potter's Bluff feel indebted to horror's old school. The gruesome special effects, however, are most definitely straight out of the Monster Kid playbook. As a result, Dead and Buried feels timeless, the sort of film that continues to offer rewards for those who discover its quirky charms.
Call it black magic. Call it a medical breakthrough. I'll take my secret to the grave.
Number 35, Saint Maud.
She'll be all right?
Oh, don't be an idiot, Richard.
You gotta hand it to director Rose Glass. Saint Maud was a successful and impressive feature-length debut for a filmmaker who seems destined for more greatness. Horror fans flocked to Saint Maud and its tale of a caregiver who may be losing her grip on reality. Some of the best horror films adapt real-world situations or struggles and lay them out against a tableau of the fantastic. Saint Maud delves deep into religious fanaticism and accompanies the theme with striking visuals. Glass's direction here feels purposeful and assured, and we can only hope she continues on this successfully creative path on future films.
Bymhlentyn, mae'r awr yn nesau. Yn fuan fy fyddin ymuno ar coflediad mawr.
Number 34, Stage Fright.
I hurt myself.
Oh, I'm awfully sorry about that. You better go home and take care of whatever it is that's hurting you.
A number of the films on this list are Italian, and that is for good reason. Stage Fright is only one of the films that sprang out of Italy's horror industry supernova during the 1970s and 80s. Director Michele Soave was a uniquely creative voice within Italian horror, and his amazing imagination permeated films like Stage Fright. Here, the well-worn slasher tropes are given new life by the completely bonkers idea of giving the killer a giant owl mask to wear. Additionally, the murder set pieces are unrepentantly graphic and sleazy. reveling in the red stuff in a manner Italian filmmakers became known for. Add to this a throbbing score by Simon Boswell, and you have a recipe for a Mediterranean horror feast.
Okay. I'm ready. Let's go.
Number 33, The Golem.
Out of darkness cometh light. Out of death springeth life.
Golems, creatures from Jewish folklore, have appeared now and again in film throughout the years. Michael Mann's The Keep comes to mind, as does the series of silent horror films that bore the creature's name back in the 1920s. This titular golem from 2018, however, successfully adapts the golem's origin story from a man-made monster into something with far more emotional resonance. Here, themes of parenthood and marital strife are counterbalanced against scenes of horror and violence. Yet the golem never feels heavy-handed. If anything, it's quite the opposite. And this is a horror film with a lot of worthwhile emotional layers.
Who do you suggest might create this creature? Moses himself, perhaps?
I will.
Number 32, A Bay of Blood.
He's a good soul, really. It's just that recently he's come up with some weird notions.
We return to Italy for our next pick. A fine example of how that country's giallo genre of graphic murder mysteries went on to influence the American slasher scene. Scenes from 1971's A Bay of Blood would be essentially lifted by movies like Friday the 13th Part 2, like the sequence involving an amorous couple who are attacked while in bed. Director Mario Bava was already a film legend prior to helming A Bay of Blood, yet it would be this film's intense levels of violence that would earn him true international infamy. There are no heroes here, only victims for the body count. A Bay of Blood is a frenzied whodunit that pushed some serious boundaries in '71. And remains relevant viewing today.
You thought you could take my mother's place, didn't you? No. But I'm going to kill you like I did tonight.
I have nothing to do with it.
Number 31, A Tale of Two Sisters.
그 여자도 이상하고 이 집도 이상해.
Horror fans in North America have long sought out imported shockers from Europe, Asia, and beyond, all to receive a properly balanced cinematic diet. A Tale of Two Sisters was one of the earlier examples of South Korean horror that made crossover headway overseas, however, and was a critical and commercial cult classic. The film is a ghost story, sure, but A Tale of Two Sisters also knows how to dance around genre conventions to hit its own creative beats. There's a lot of darkness here, a tragic tale that isn't for those seeking out easy answers or happy endings tied up in a bow. Instead, A Tale of Two Sisters presents a psychologically messy family drama with an extra side helping of supernatural scares.
네가 나한테 마녀 하나 있는 거 알아. 내가 나쁜 아빠란 것도 알고.
Number 30, Tales from the Crypt.
Well, at least feed my dog, please. He'll be fed all right.
The horror anthology has always been a great medium with which to tell a variety of stories. The original Tales from the Crypt from '72 is arguably one of the best of these, and packs some serious star power. Joan Collins, Peter Cushing, Patrick McGee, and more all lend their talents to this wonderfully creepy anthology full of thematic schadenfreude for those who face the Crypt Keeper, played by Ralph Richardson. These are mini morality plays with the sort of classy execution that was a hallmark of British horror in the 1970s. There is no doubt that Tales from the Crypt is some of the best horror ever produced by the UK.
Who's next? Perhaps you?
Number 29, Quon.
お前が自分で想像しとったことは全部幻じゃ。死んだ者が訪ねてきた以外はの。
Tales from the Crypt isn't the only awesome horror anthology film on this list. Quon hails from Japan and was released back in 1964, yet it still possesses some seriously scary staying power decades later. Scary, that is, if you can get past just how gorgeous this film looks. The cinematography, set design, and visual style of Quon are sumptuous and impossible to forget. At the same time, its tales of terror bring to the screen stories that are ghostly morality tales with plenty of spooky visuals. Quon is a film that is astonishingly atmospheric and guaranteed to put you in the Halloween spirit. Just be sure to start this one late at night when the moon is full.
美少年ね、あなたは。私はもうあなたに危害は加えません。
Number 28, The Burning.
You ain't never gonna forget this man. As long as you live, you're never gonna see a freak like this.
The 1980s were a halcyon decade for the slasher movie, particularly during its earliest years. The Burning may not be spoken of as often as its peers, but there are more than enough elements here to make it worth your time. For starters, there's the presence of future stars Jason Alexander and Holly Hunter, appearing here in the infancy of their careers. Additionally, the special effects from Tom Savini are off the charts in terms of execution, particularly on the infamous raft scene. Meanwhile, Yes keyboardist Rick Wakeman delivers a wonderful score that's quirky and creepy in equal measure, and the ending bucks final girl slasher convention.
So don't look. He'll see you. Don't breathe. He'll hear you. Don't move. You're dead!
Number 27, In the Mouth of Madness.
Every species can smell its own extinction. The last ones left won't have a pretty time of it.
Director John Carpenter is lauded for films like Halloween and The Thing, and rightfully so. However, fans would be wise not to sleep on some of his later work, including this banger from 1994. In the Mouth of Madness is Carpenter indulging in some seriously occult Lovecraftian vibes, but doing so with his own inimitable flair. The question of fantasy versus reality is very present, as In the Mouth of Madness revolves around the works of fictional horror novelist Sutter Kane. Answers here aren't exactly clear-cut, and Carpenter's film has a great time going off the deep end in terms of atmosphere, excitement, and impressive visuals. In the Mouth of Madness is a must-watch.
A reality is just what we tell each other it is. Sane and insane could easily switch places if the insane were to become the majority.
Number 26, Demons.
Rosemary se puso la máscara y se arañó en la cara. Y ese arañazo la convirtió en un demonio. Un instrumento del mal.
There are few Italian horror films from the 1980s that possess as much sinful glee as 1985's Demons. Director Lamberto Bava had this stuff in his blood, since his dad was the aforementioned maestro Mario Bava. Demons is substantially more popcorn fare than much of the elder Bava's work, but this is in no way a slight. In fact, this is one of the reasons why Demons is so successful. It keeps plot points and extraneous locations to a minimum, setting up the story where people are locked inside of a movie theater full of bloodthirsty creatures. Demons is heavy metal horror turned up to the max, with insane special effects and a pace that never lets up. It is pure escapist pleasure.
No es la película. Es este lugar.
Number 25, Don't Torture a Duckling.
Because it was found lying not far away.
Not far away from where?
From where another boy was killed.
No. Not another one.
Don't Torture a Duckling is very different than Demons stylistically, despite being produced in the same country. Director Lucio Fulci was often referred to as Italy's godfather of gore, but this film proves that the man certainly was not defined by this moniker. Instead, Don't Torture a Duckling tackles small-town persecution, religious fanaticism, murder, and abuse in perhaps the bleakest manner possible. Fulci's direction is strong and stylish, but never at the expense of the story. Meanwhile, Florinda Bolkan's performance is at once both tragic and mesmerizing, helping elevate Don't Torture a Duckling towards the apex of Italy's horror pantheon.
Well, I've got to talk to someone, don't I? I mean, you're the only civilized human being in this lousy place.
Thanks a bunch.
Number 24, The Changeling.
No one's been able to live in it. It doesn't want people.
Are you looking for a slow burn, creepily atmospheric horror film to keep you warm on those cold winter nights? Then might we suggest The Changeling from 1980? This Canadian horror film is often cited as one of the country's best international horror offerings, and with good reason. Newer generations have been discovering this spook show and becoming captivated by its story and performances. George C. Scott in particular shines in the lead role, as a grieving man who moves into a house that may or may not be haunted. John Russell lost everything after the untimely deaths of his wife and child, and the Changeling channels this loss to charge nearly every frame with melancholy, beauty, and, yes, fear.
I understand you lost your wife and daughter a little while ago.
Maybe it shook you up. Maybe too much. Maybe you need help.
Number 23, Cemetery Man.
Why the barbed wire? Do they climb in at night?
No. They climb out sometimes.
Would you mind coming down?
Cemetery Man is yet another film from Michele Soavi to make our list, a testament to the director's timeless power. This flick may be Soavi's crowning achievement as a filmmaker, and proof that Italian horror still had something to say during the 90s. The film stars a young Rupert Everett as a cemetery caretaker who keeps having to take care of the annoying living dead who rise from their tombs every night. Soavi injects Cemetery Man with sexuality, violence, and an anarchic sense of humor that goes a long way in keeping this film unlike anything you've likely ever seen. Additionally, can we just say that it also includes what just has to be the greatest Grim Reaper ever committed to film?
Stop killing the dead. They're mine. If you don't want the dead coming back to life, why don't you just kill the living?
Number 22, Opera.
Tonight you make your debut as Lady Macbeth.
What?
Are you happy?
Who's speaking? Is this a joke?
Dario Argento was already well established as a horror icon prior to directing Opera in 1987. The director's groundbreaking work with films like Deep Red and Suspiria helped cement Italy as an international voice for genre cinema. Yet Opera proves that Argento still had plenty of gas left in the creative tank. Graphic murders are taking place within an opera house that's gearing up for a high-profile production of Macbeth. What does this have to do with Mara Chikova, and why is she being forced to watch? The answers aren't so simple, and honesty takes a backseat to all of the wild and crazy set pieces that make Opera such idiosyncratic viewing. This one may be one of Argento's most unhinged works.
Are you nervous?
A little. No, a lot.
Well, I'm here now, so you can relax.
Number 21, The Innocents.
Enter, my lord. Come from your prison. Come from your grave. For the moon is arisen.
This incredible film from 1961 is an all-time classic ghost story, a masterpiece adapted from Henry James's novella The Turn of the Screw. The film is all about atmosphere, with a growing sense of unease, paranoia, and self-doubt building to a feverish pitch. This is filmmaking that takes its time ramping up tension, and the end results make this ride utterly worth the wait. The idea of childhood innocence is juxtaposed against ghostly possessions and hallucinations that may, or again may not, be stress-induced. The special effects, and particularly the haunting music, remain powerful today, making The Innocents a film experience well ahead of its time.
We must try to learn what it is these horrors want.
Number 20, Piercing. If you've seen Nicolas Pesce's The Eyes of My Mother, you know his movies don't exactly make for easy viewing. Piercing is no different.
Sorry, I'll keep it down.
You could still kill her, though.
Based on a book by Japanese novelist Ryu Murakami, it stars Christopher Abbott as Reed, a businessman who plans on checking into a motel and murdering a sex worker. The movie opens with Reed standing over his infant child with an ice pick, and only gets worse from there. It will certainly divide opinion, as it's definitely not for everyone, but it's impressively stylish, reminiscent of the slick Italian giallo horror films of the 70s. So, if you want a retro-style horror thriller, you could do a lot worse than Piercing. Number 19, Resolution. Justin Benson and Aaron Scott Moorhead are two of the most talented indie horror filmmakers working today, and their work remains criminally underappreciated. Their 2012 film Resolution is particularly great. It follows a graphic designer named Michael who receives a disturbing video from his best friend Chris. Worried about Chris's mental state, Michael travels to a remote cabin to rescue his delusional friend.
I mean, there are a lot of weird people out here. Okay, are you sure you don't know who shot that video?
No, I'm not sure.
It serves as a brilliant meta-commentary on the horror genre, and many critics have compared it favorably to The Cabin in the Woods, with some arguing it's even better. Both this film and its sort of sequel, The Endless, which stars Benson and Moorhead, are required viewing for horror fans.
Did you see that?
See what?
See what?
That.
Number 18, The Ritual. Those looking for Blair Witch Project type scares could do a lot worse than The Ritual. This movie was released on Netflix back in 2018, although it failed to generate interest outside the die-hard horror community. It follows a group of friends led by the always incredible and underrated Rafe Spall, who are hunted through the woods by an unseen entity.
I woke up stark bollock naked in front of that thing, praying to it, and I'd love it if someone could explain that to me.
Like the Blair Witch Project, the ritual strikes a delicate balance between psychological horror and physical scares, and the terror comes just as much from the men's diminishing trust in conflicts as it does from the visceral spooks. Add in the unrelentingly bleak atmosphere, and you have yourself another reason to never enter the woods. Number 17, Eden Lake. Tell us if you've heard this premise before. A young couple in a dangerously secluded area is stalked by a group of menacing psychos. It's the basis to many a slasher movie. But Eden Lake takes the tired concept and manages to make it fresh again thanks to its sheer and unrelenting brutality. This is not an easy film to watch. It is violent, it is bloody, and worst of all, it is realistic. Unlike most slashers that vie for shocks and gore, this one remains rooted in realism, and the results are just as emotional as they are disorienting. It requires a strong stomach, but those who can get through it will find a lot to like here.
No, just call the police! Call the police!
What are they, eh? What are they to her?
Number 16, Creep. Don't be put off by the found footage style. Creep is legitimately, well, creepy.
This is no longer a business transaction, okay?
Okay.
This is a partnership, and this is a journey into the heart. And I'm real glad it's you coming with me.
Creep follows Aaron, a videographer who's hired by the dying Joseph to film a day in the life for his unborn son. While Joseph is eccentric and a little off, he is relatively harmless, until he isn't. Creep is definitely a slow burn, but the ebb and flow of tension keeps viewers on their toes and questioning Joseph's motives and personality. Mark Duplass somehow manages to imbue Joseph with humanity while also creeping us the heck out. And it's amazing to see him effortlessly switch between moments of poignant tenderness and sinister depravity.
Are you gonna let me go? Why are you doing this to me?
Number 15, Eyes Without a Face. Eyes Without a Face is rarely discussed, which is a shame, seeing as how it's one of the most beautiful horror movies of all time. Yeah, we said beautiful. The film was initially met with hostile reviews, as critics thought that a genre film was beneath esteemed documentary filmmaker Georges Franju. However, it underwent a critical reevaluation upon re-release, and is now considered a poetic, surreal, and fairy tale-esque masterpiece. It influenced a generation of filmmakers, from John Woo to John Carpenter, who used this movie as inspiration to create the iconic Michael Myers mask. It's not your standard horror film by any means, but it is haunting and emotionally stirring. Number 14, Death Dream. Also known as Dead of Night, Death Dream was directed by Bob Clark, the same man behind the wildly influential slasher movie Black Christmas. Also, the comedy A Christmas Story. He seems to have very mixed feelings about Christmas. Death Dream was inspired by the famous short story The Monkey's Paw, which also involves a mother's wish that her dead son return to her. Although the wish is granted, it's not exactly what the family had in mind. The movie is a slow-burning chiller that wonderfully utilizes the zombie genre as an allegory for war and the problems that shell-shocked veterans have with reintegration. It's an unusually smart horror movie that deserves more recognition within the canon.
You killed that truck driver. I died for you, Doc. Why shouldn't you return the favor?
Number 13, Bone Tomahawk. For a movie so jam-packed with incredible actors, Bone Tomahawk is painfully ignored.
I'm not sulking, I'm sour.
Oh, don't dodge.
What do you want me to say?
No.
Leaves
Starring Kurt Russell, Patrick Wilson, Richard Jenkins, and Matthew Fox, the movie is a deft blend of Western and horror. The cast delivers fantastic performances, and the film balances slow-paced, character-driven work with raw, visceral thrills.
If you want to question my morals, do it later.
And how visceral they are. The gore and makeup work in this movie are unbelievable, and there's one scene in particular that will remain burned into your memory for years to come. Whether you want to watch a unique Western with great dialogue, or witness an unsettling gore-filled horror, Bone Tomahawk is your movie. Number 12, Carnival of Souls. Carnival of Souls is certainly an acquired taste, but those feeling daring and experimental will be rewarded with one of the most gloriously atmospheric horror movies of all time. It was shot on a meager budget of $33,000, but what director Herc Harvey does with that money is frankly amazing.
That's the whole story. He's been following me, that's all there is to it.
It isn't that simple, though, is it?
The movie is perhaps most well known for its striking cinematography and ghastly visuals, as it makes even the most ordinary of areas and situations seem ripped from a nightmare.
Don't close the wait! Wait! Let me in! You gotta let me in! I gotta get on that train, I gotta get away from here! Please!
There are no cheap jump scares, no horrifying acts of violence, and no scary monsters. It's just a creepy art house movie interested in bewildering its viewers, and it succeeds in spectacular fashion. Number 11, Patti Pool. Patti Pool is a very different sort of zombie flick.
We have an exclusive live report from Ken Loney in the Sunshine Chopper.
It follows the crew of a radio station in real-life Patti Pool, Ontario, Canada, who learn of an apocalyptic virus from their helicopter reporter and eerie audio transmissions.
There's definitely fatalities here. Down there, people have just died, Grant. I don't know what the hell has just happened.
The entire movie takes place within the radio station, so we never actually see the chaos outside. But in some ways, that's even scarier.
Don't move, and you just stay there, and we're gonna...
Cannibals, and some are naked, and they're like dogs.
Many great horror movies get by on terrifying viewers with their own imaginations, and Patti Pool is no different. It's also highly unique within the genre, as the virus is transmitted through specific words rather than bites. It's a little out there, but it all plays into the movie's theme about the meaning and power of words.
Please avoid contact with close family members and refrain from the following. All terms of endearment. Such as honey or
Sydney.
sweetheart.
Number 10, The Autopsy of Jane Doe.
Some things you can't unsee.
The premise is relatively simple. A father-son coroner team is tasked with performing an autopsy on a mysterious Jane Doe found at the scene of a multiple homicide. But as they begin to unravel the mysteries surrounding the body, the duo is plagued with horrific instances of supernatural phenomena.
Those things we found inside, those were impossible. Whatever the hell happened in here, we are way past possible.
The movie is wonderfully written and directed, offering tantalizing mysteries, surprising answers, and some wickedly unpredictable scares. It is also proficiently acted by Emile Hirsch and esteemed character actor Brian Cox. Don't let that somewhat banal title fool you. The Autopsy of Jane Doe is anything but boring. Number 9, Kill List. Kill List is an extravagant blending of genres, pulled off expertly by director Ben Wheatley.
You come with recommendations.
They're well earned.
It begins as a crime thriller, as an ex-British soldier turned professional hitman is given a kill list by a mysterious shadow client.
Turn round.
Thank you.
But as the story progresses, it veers deeper and deeper into disturbing and visceral horror akin to a fever dream. Critics have compared the movie to The Blair Witch Project and The Wicker Man. Despite its obvious influences, Kill List is unlike any horror movie you've ever seen, and it will leave you genuinely disturbed and emotional. That much we can guarantee. Number 8, Alice, Sweet Alice. Alice, Sweet Alice is another movie that is not easy to watch. It tells the story of young Alice, a troubled child who's suspected of murdering her younger sister on the day of her first communion.
Go with me! He's dead! Let's go!
So, right off the bat, you have murder during an important religious ceremony. Needless to say, the movie was met with some controversy.
The dead have ways. The dead don't rest easy.
With its gut-wrenching premise, Alice, Sweet Alice is a solid horror mystery thriller concoction that helped usher in the slasher genre. Unlike many slashers, this movie showed surprising filmmaking craft, with an eerie score, flashy cinematography, and a solid lead performance from Paula Shepherd. Number 7, Inside. This French horror thriller is not for the faint of heart. It's violent, disturbing, and gory, but also darkly gripping.
J'ai appelé les flics. Dégagez maintenant, ils sont là dans 5 minutes.
Alison Paradis stars as Sarah, an expectant mother who's grieving the recent death of her husband. She becomes the victim of a brutal home invasion by an attacker who wants to abduct her unborn fetus. Yeah, you can imagine now why this movie's so upsetting. Inside is filled with horrific violence, all shown in unimaginably graphic detail. While traumatic and unrelenting, it's also far above the usual grindhouse fare. Stylish, impeccably acted, and superbly paced and edited. Inside is a grindhouse movie made with artistry.
Ah oui, je ne sais pas, peut-être qu'elle veut agrandir ou nettoyer des éléments.
Number 6, The Haunting. Please do not judge The Haunting on that horrendous 1999 remake with Liam Neeson and Catherine Zeta-Jones. Forget that exists and watch the 1963 original instead.
I hope this is what I've been waiting for all my life.
This movie was adapted from Shirley Jackson's novel The Haunting of Hill House, which is often regarded as the greatest haunted house novel ever written. And while the Netflix series was certainly great, it wasn't a faithful adaptation of the story. The movie is, and it is brilliant. Like the novel, it serves as both a chilling haunted house yarn and a frightening character study, which is aided by Julie Harris's tremendous performance as the unhinged Eleanor. The Haunting may be the scariest, most psychological, and most stylish ghost movie ever made.
I will not look back because then they will know what I'm thinking.
Eleanor, turn around and come down.
Number 5, The Invitation. The Invitation is a dinner party thriller first and foremost. You know how it goes. Someone is invited to dinner, the hosts are a little wacky, and tension slowly builds before boiling over into violence and mayhem. And while The Invitation follows this formula to a T, it is a very well-crafted piece of work, with a stellar performance by Logan Marshall Green.
No, something very dangerous is going on here, and nobody's talking about it. We're all just ignoring it because David brought out some good wine.
However, it's also a movie about the contrast between inner turmoil and outer appearances, and deals with some heavy themes such as loss, depression, and acceptance.
It's just, you don't think I know? I know.
Hey, let's get a drink.
It's just that easy for you.
By mixing in complex character work with the more conventional thrills of the dinner party thriller, The Invitation becomes greater than the sum of its parts. Number 4, Audition. The second Ryu Murakami adaptation on our list, Audition is just as depraved, if not more so. This Japanese horror film is now considered a cult classic, but its success came slowly. It first premiered at the Vancouver International Film Festival and gradually earned attention as it toured the festival circuit and was released on DVD. The film generated a strong response, with many critics lauding the movie's acting, wild shifts in tone, and climactic torture sequence. The latter is what most people seem to remember about the film, and for good reason. It's singularly shocking and gruesome, and the inspiration behind Eli Roth's splatter film, Hostel. Number 3, Session 9. If you love the inherent creepiness of abandoned mental asylums, then Session 9 is your movie.
A lot of patients ended up in the streets when this place closed down. And some of them, they come back. I found a half a dozen squatting up there last spring.
It follows an asbestos cleaning crew that's tasked with cleansing an abandoned mental hospital. The movie was shot at the real Denver State Hospital, lending it a creepy sense of authenticity. You can practically feel the hospital's history through the screen.
It cut her up, Doc. It cut her up real bad.
The movie's been praised for its foreboding atmosphere, and its style and tone have been favorably compared to Stanley Kubrick's masterpiece, The Shining. By relying on psychological tension over jump scares or gore, Session 9 truly gets under your skin and into your head.
You gotta wake up. You tell me where they are. Would you wake up? Tell me. Would you wake up?
Number 2, Possession. On the surface, Possession is about a young couple going through a divorce. The Berlin Wall is used as a metaphor for a crumbling marriage. And that's where the movie leaves conventional plots, characters, and symbolism behind. Directed by Polish filmmaker Andrzej Żuławski, Possession is like Dario Argento's Suspiria on acid. The acting is gleefully over the top, and the camera swoops and zags and zooms, refusing to remain static.
What can I do about it?
Nothing. Please.
And yes, there are monsters. It is an unapologetic filmmaking extravaganza, and it is glorious to behold. It's more of an emotional and sensory experience than a straightforward thriller, so your mileage may vary, but what an experience it is. Before we continue, be sure to subscribe to our channel and ring the bell to get notified about our latest videos. You have the option to be notified for occasional videos or all of them. If you're on your phone, make sure you go into your settings and switch on notifications. Number 1. Terrifier. You may see the poster of Terrifier and laugh, but you know what they say about judging a book, or in this case, a movie, by its cover. Terrifier follows a clown named Art who stalks and butchers people, and yes, that plot is ridiculously simple. But like all great slasher movies, the craft elevates the elementary story. Terrifier is surprisingly well shot considering its minuscule budget. Art the Clown is a fantastic villain, and the kills are as bloody as a horror fan could want. It's a delirious throwback to campy 80s slashers, and it doesn't pretend to be anything more. At a time when slashers have given way to ghosts and ghouls and demons, Terrifier is a breath of old school fresh air.
I hope your 15 minutes of fame was worth it, you sick son of a bitch.
Which of these movies is going on your watch list? Let us know in the comments.
It's not the end of the world, folks. It's just the end of the day.
Did you enjoy this video? Check out these other clips from WatchMojo, and be sure to subscribe and ring the bell to be notified about our latest videos.